Chapter 1381. The great king's second consort Shu Quan also didn't expect that the situation would turn out to be this irreversible. When she returned to her senses, the person beside her anxiously reported, "Not good, Prince Consort, fourth young miss has been separated from the crowd." How did this happen? Shu Quan's complexion instantly turned deathly pale, her body on the verge of collapse. Quickly go and find her." Shu Quan brought 8 bodyguards. Even if half of them wanted to go and find Shu Hui, the crowd was as turbulent as the sea, so the bodyguards couldn't squeeze out to find her. Actually, she had long told this fourth sister not to join in the fun. After all, Shiluo Street was really a bit chaotic. She was afraid that such a situation would occur and she wouldn't be able to protect fourth sister. At that time, her mother would definitely be the first to not let her off. "Prince Consort, don't be anxious. Perhaps fourth young miss is fine. We can't squeeze out right now, so let's wait for the crowd to disperse a bit before we go." Shu Quan's complexion turned pale. Thinking back, at the beginning, the line was actually quite orderly. After everyone received their rice, they left in high spirits. However, as the waiting time grew longer and longer, some of the brawny men at the back of the line began to clamor impatiently. A perfectly good rice distribution trip ultimately turned into a violent riot. The most pitiful ones were those poor commoners who didn't even have the strength to truss a chicken. Those who escaped quickly were able to avoid this calamity, but those who were too slow had their fists swung at their heads. Just as they were feeling anxious, 2,000 imperial guards arrived with the crown prince and crown princess. The moment they arrived, the chaotic situation was under control. "His Highness? His Highness!" The great king's second consort Shu Quan cried out in surprise and joy. She, and the others also cried out excitedly, "His Highness is here, it's His Highness is here. We're saved, that's great." These 2,000 elite soldiers were well trained and had astonishing mobility. In a short while, the 30 to 50 brawny men who were causing trouble were completely subdued. Speaking of which, those brawny men were mostly ordinary people, just a bit stronger than the average person. It was truly too easy for 2,000 well-trained imperial guards to deal with them. Among them, a small ringleader who resisted fiercely clenched his fist and grabbed a woman in front of Mo Lien, viciously intending to beat her up. Mo Lien angrily urged her horse to rush over. She pulled out her Black Moon sword and slashed at the man's waist, killing him on the spot. This bloody turn of events shocked everyone. Shu Quan was even more unlucky. She happened to be standing close to the squad leader, and the blood he spat out sprayed all over her face. Shu Quan staggered, her hands covering her small face as she screamed in horror. Mo Lien heard the familiar voice and turned her horse around, passing through the crowd. Aba sat in front of him, and her curious gaze landed on the great king's concubine, Shu Quan. She recognized this woman. She seemed to be Mo Lien's sister-in-law. Mo Lien frowned. Could it be that this inexplicable turmoil was caused by these women? "Go ask them what's going on," Mo Lien said coldly as she swept a glance at Hui Feng and the others. A group of imperial guards walked up and shoved the commoners to the two sides, creating a path that could accommodate 2 horses. Hui Feng and the others quickly rushed forward and mentioned the matter that the commoners wanted to ask. Although the unlucky commoners were quite frightened, they were still able to stutter and recount the situation. Before long, Mo Lien understood the entire situation. By this time, Shu Quan had already regained her wits and hastily squeezed out of the Imperial Guard's protective circle. "Your Highness." Chapter 1382. "Your Highness, I beg you, please save my fourth sister. Fourth sister was scattered by the crowd and is missing. I'm worried that she'll be in danger." Shu Quan looked distressed as she went forward to beg. The crown prince frowned as he looked at her and asked, "Does royal brother know that you came to Shiluo Street to distribute rice?" Shu Quan used a handkerchief to wipe her tears and sweat as she nodded repeatedly. "Simply nonsense," Mo Lien reprimanded. Shiluo Street was originally filled with poor people. Every time the imperial court distributed rice, they would send out troops to maintain order. They were afraid that something would go wrong and a good thing would turn into a bad thing. Yet these women in front of her dared to come to the slums with just 7 or 8 guards. Did they have brains or not? Usually, this sister-in-law of hers was still considered calm and magnanimous. She didn't expect her to do such a foolish thing. Could it be that her intelligence had been lowered after being with Brother Great King for so long? Actually, Shu Quan felt very bitter in her heart. Previously, the Great King had said that he would open a house of treasures with someone and talked about how much money it could make. He had even encouraged her to move all of her family's valuables into the house of treasures. In the end, the treasures were all stolen on the first day of business. Not only did they lose everything, they even owed quite a bit of debt. The monthly salary that the imperial court distributed wasn't enough to cover their expenses. After all, there was such a large family and the Great King's concubines were too many to count. It really made it difficult for them to make ends meet. Raising guards and maids also required food and money. Recently, the Great King's estate had almost reached the point where it couldn't make ends meet. Who knew how many of the maids, servants, and guards in the estate had scattered? Now that they were relying on her dowry to cover their expenses, she didn't know how long they could last. 2 days ago, her husband had listened to someone's suggestion and whimsically said that he wanted to come to Shiluo Street to distribute rice and gain some popular support. She had already analyzed the difficulty of winning the popular support with her husband. Now that the entire imperial court followed His Highness the Crown Prince's lead, the commoners were also full of praise for His Highness the Crown Prince. Could it be that you thought that by casually distributing rice or something, you could immediately gain the favor of a large group of people? That's impossible. There wasn't much food left in the mansion, but the Great King's son was stubborn and stubborn. He only asked for the results and never asked about the process. Helpless, Shu Quan braced herself and came. In the end, the rice distribution had caused a huge commotion. Now, even his younger sister had been lost. It was really a thankless task. The most important thing now was to find fourth sister and bring her back. Everything else could be discussed. Since it was a request from the Great King's consort, Emolienne would not turn a blind eye to it. With a look, several small groups of imperial guards spread out and searched the nearby alleys. Shu Quan looked at Emolienne helplessly and anxiously muttered to herself, "What to do? What to do?" Meanwhile, Emolienne dismounted while holding Qiao Mu's hand, and he had the accompanying physicians examine the injuries of the nearby commoners. The commoners seemed to have found their backbone. Under the leadership of the Imperial Army Commander, they lined up in an orderly manner to wait for the doctors to check on their injuries. Those with more serious injuries were carried to the front. After a round of treatment, a very young doctor from the Imperial Physician Building came forward and bowed to Emolienne. "Your Highness, most of the commoners only have superficial injuries. Only 2 have slightly more serious injuries. Their hands and feet are fractured and need to be set." Emolienne nodded. At this time, the small groups of imperial guards that had spread out to search for Xu Hui also rushed back. Chapter 1383. One of the captains respectfully bowed to Emolienne and said, "Your Highness, we've searched everywhere, but we didn't find fourth young Miss Xu's figure." When Shu Quan heard that, she couldn't help but stagger. Her complexion instantly turned incomparably pale, and she felt dizzy as if she would fall to the ground in the next moment. She hurriedly went up to support her and cried out in alarm, "Princess Consort, Princess Consort." Emolienne frowned slightly. "Auntie Wang, I'll send you back first." "No, you can't. You can't go back like this. Your Highness, something must have happened to younger sister. It was so chaotic just now. If by any chance she was taken away by evildoers, then what should we do?" Shu Quan cried as she said, "Your Highness, please send more people to search for fourth sister. You mustn't let anything happen to her. We will naturally search for her, but for now, I'll send you back first." "Your Highness, do you have any accessories or handkerchiefs that your younger sister has touched?" Aba suddenly asked indifferently. Yes. Shu Quan subconsciously fished out an embroidered handkerchief and carefully opened it. She said softly, "This was personally embroidered by fourth sister for me the year I got married." Arba glanced at her and nodded. With a wave of her finger, several hundred light little butterflies circled forward in clusters. They stayed on that handkerchief for a few seconds like a swarm of bees before scattering and flying in all directions. This scene made Shu Quan somewhat dazed, and Shikar beside her looked even more shocked. Everyone thought that the crown princess used some special talisman to summon so many butterflies with a wave of her hand. Shu Quan glanced gratefully at Arba and hurriedly thanked her. "Many thanks to the crown princess for your help." "Many thanks." Arba didn't say much. Putting herself in her shoes, if her Shaolin was taken away by evildoers, she would also be very anxious. This was human nature. Although she didn't like that Madame Shu or Madame Zhuang, this great king's princess consort seemed to be a reasonable person. In less than 10 minutes, the venom-tail butterfly Queen Xiao Xiao sent her a voice transmission. "Master, I've found the place. Come with me." Xiao Xiao turned into a colorful butterfly and ran out of the paradise. She flapped her wings and flew back and forth in front of her. Arba pulled Emolien's sleeve. Emolien had long known that this little wife of his was a capable person, so he promptly picked her up by the waist and leaped onto the horse. "Leave half of the people here to continue watching. The rest of you, come with me." Shu Quan also hastily mounted a horse and followed along. The anxiety and impatience in her heart overflowed with words. The group of people followed Butterfly Xiao Xiao, who was leading the way. They rode their horses through the small alley and arrived in front of an ordinary small courtyard. "This?" Emolien lowered his head and looked at his wife with a smile. Arba nodded. Shu Quan still wanted to ask something, but suddenly heard fourth young lady's blood-curdling screams coming from inside the door. In a split second, her entire face turned ashen. I'll go in and take a look." "Why you all don't follow in?" Shu Quan stuttered and brought Xi'er in. Arba raised her head and glanced at Emolien. "How do you plan on telling your royal father about this?" "Just tell him the truth." Emolien nonchalantly swept a glance inside the door. In any case, they had already benevolently helped to find the person. As for what happened, it wasn't something they could care about. "Jojo, on the other hand, you've raised a bunch of useful little things on this paradise planet." Emolien leaned close to her ear and whispered. Chapter 1384. Arba nodded, muttering softly to him, "I've been raising them for a long time. Previously, I only sent them out to scout for information or something. Recently, Xiao Xiao told me that they've been accumulating mystic energy in my paradise planet, and they've also advanced in rank. Now, they can rely on a wisp of aura to distinguish and track." Emolien's eyes brightened. "That's really great, Jojo. In the future, I'll have to rely on you to find anything." "Moi." As he spoke, he even took advantage of the fact that she wasn't paying attention to give her a peck on the cheek. Qiao Mu's face instantly flushed red, and she looked around with a guilty conscience. However, she only saw the royal guards lining up behind them like door gods. They were all looking down, as if they hadn't seen anything at all. Her little fist hammered him hard, and she rolled her eyes at him. "Don't flirt." "I'm not flirting." Prince Mo had an innocent expression as he blinked at her and said, "I'm just communicating normally with my wife." "Haha, so funny." Arba swept him a speechless glance. The crown prince immediately waved his hand, leaving behind 100 imperial guards to escort Shu Quan and her sister back. The rest continued to follow him back to South Shiluo Street where they had caused a ruckus back then. By now, the buzzing crowd had already dispersed by quite a bit. The ground was littered with broken pieces, rubble, wooden shelves, and the like. Arba's eyes flashed, and her gaze landed on a little girl who was sitting in front of a garbage dump on the street corner, bawling loudly. The girl's mother was currently hugging and coaxing a little boy, so how could she have the time to care about the little girl sitting on the garbage dump? This scene could be seen everywhere in the slums of Shiluo Street. Arba shook her head. "Have you distributed the winter fruits from last time?" Emolien nodded. It was handed over to Song Yuan. He did a pretty good job, getting a portion of the people to work. The winter fruits will be their monthly salary. Isn't that great? Chiao Mu also nodded when she heard this. She also did not advocate giving it away for free, especially those able-bodied young laborers. They absolutely could not be condoned for being carefree and abhorring work. Receiving rewards for labor was the right way to go. I've collected a lot of winter fruits. I'll give them all to you. Abba handed over a dozen storage talismans to Mo Lien. Mo Lien was immediately displeased. No, how can I let my wife bleed every time? Abba looked at him silently and told him honestly, it really can't fit anymore. It's all piled up on the ground outside the warehouse. You can go and see for yourself tonight. Mo Lien, all right, his little wife was too rich. Since the little rich woman didn't care, he would just keep it. He would just treat it as helping his wife to consume her food, hee. If word got out, people would laugh their heads off. Helping to consume food? In this day and age, who didn't hide some food? Only this little oddball could do this. The defensive wall on the west side needs to be reinforced. When the time comes, I'll have official song come to Shiluo Street to issue missions and then select the best able-bodied laborers. Presumably, as long as there are food supplies, there will be a lot of people willing to take on this easy mission. Abba grunted and nodded her head like a chick pecking at rice. In Mo Lien's eyes, she looked especially cute, and he stared at her with a somewhat infatuated gaze. Abba didn't notice his gaze at first, but when she did, she suddenly raised her hand to cover his eyes. You're not allowed to look. Bad person. He muttered and pulled down her little hand, beaming as he said, You're not allowed to stop me from looking at you. Chapter 1385. Abba lightly spat at him. Who would have thought that after this guy got married, he would become impudent in front of others? He wrapped an arm around her waist and smiled at her with narrowed eyes. What are you spitting at? I only have you as my wife, so who else can I look at if not you? Wife, daughter-in-law. His demonic voice reverberated through the air. Abba burst into laughter. Looking at this guy, she couldn't help but laugh. Shameless. She reached out to pinch his waist, but she felt that the muscles under his clothes were distinct and so stiff that it hurt her little hand. What do I need to be embarrassed about in front of my daughter-in-law? Mo Lien innocently rubbed against her. Don't mess around. Abba pushed him away and looked up at him. I'm talking to you about something serious. Speak. I plan to come to Shiluo Street tomorrow to distribute grain, but I have a condition first. I'll only distribute to the old, weak, women, and children. Those young and strong shouldn't even think about getting a grain of rice from me for free. The Crown Prince's eyes lit up. Jojo, you want to win over the hearts of the people for your husband, right? Abba, I think you're thinking too much. A certain Crown Princess expressionlessly glanced at her husband. You're too good, Jojo. The Crown Prince was so happy that he wanted to fly. He hugged Abba and was about to kiss her twice as a reward. Unexpectedly, darling Chiao reached out her small hand and covered his lips. Her stoic face expressionlessly swept over him. I'm just annoyed that the grain in the granary is almost full, so I want to take it out and distribute it. Prince Mo, what could he say? Only a nouveau riche had the right to act extravagantly. Okay. As long as you're happy. Prince Mo carried her and mounted the horse. We're still newlyweds. Look at how busy you are. Tomorrow, your husband will come with you to distribute grain, okay? Oh, you want to win over the hearts of the people, right? Prince Mo, does this crown prince need something like the hearts of the people? Isn't that something you can summon with a wave of your hand? Braggart. Abba glanced at this confident fellow. Where did you throw the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal to? I haven't seen him for 2 days. Mo Lien smiled. Don't worry, he's living very well. At this time, a certain venerable immortal, who was being talked about by Abba, popped his head out from a pile of bejeweled nectar and raised his cup to Hidden Flower. Drink, continue drinking. I'll drink you to death. Hidden Flower silently felt that his life was really bitter. As His Highness subordinate, He had to run around pretending to be a corpse puppet to complete a mission, and then he had to be in charge of drinking with this venerable immortal who would collapse after one jug and whose alcohol tolerance was extremely poor. It was simply too much. He was the captain of the secret pavilion, but he ended up following such an unreliable master. Emolien thought to himself, "Are you kidding me? How could he let such a big candle come and ruin his and his wife's wedding life? How could Arbor know that a certain black-bellied person would treat a venerable immortal like this?" Hearing this, he nodded without any suspicion. "It's right to treat him well. He's quite powerful. Who knows, we might need his help in the future." However, this deity-inviting talisman was a bit strange. Why was it that the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal still hadn't returned after 3 to 5 days? Emolien carried Arbor and rode towards the palace. She leaned close to her ear and whispered, "Jojo, you clearly saw that those women and children were pitiful, so you wanted to go and distribute grain. She even said that she had too much grain and couldn't put it down. This child was always stubborn. This little fellow had always been someone who only knew how to do things but didn't say anything. Her personality was very worrying." Chapter 1386. If one didn't know her extremely well, they would more or less misunderstand her due to her expressionless stoic face. Emolien lightly nuzzled her head. "It's fine. Even if the entire world doesn't understand you, there's still me who understands you." Arbor's gaze flickered, as if a string in her heart had been tugged. She looked up with her watery eyes and glanced at him. Clip-clop, clip-clop, clip-clop. A date-red horse galloped toward them as fast as lightning. Arbor turned around to look, and her small mouth involuntarily twitched. Huifeng's hobby is quite unique. He actually chose such a bright red horse. A black-clothed youth sitting on a red blazing horse was truly an extremely comical scene. "I also think he's ugly riding it," Emolien quietly complained to his wife. "Say, how great would it be if such a blazing precious horse were to sit on my Jojo? My Jojo is so beautiful, so wouldn't she be even more beautiful sitting on this blazing date horse?" Arbor actually nodded in agreement. That should be the case. The Royal Guard commander Huifeng, who had been listening to the young couple's complaints, couldn't help but want to roll his eyes. What to do? His two masters were each more thick-skinned than the other. This simply refreshed his deep understanding of this world. "Your Highness." Huifeng caught up and gallantly cupped his hands at the two of them from his horse. Emolien quietly said to her wife, "Look at him, he just had to catch up and disturb our two-person world. Why did I take in such a dumb subordinate?" Arbor immediately nodded empathetically. "Actually, none of the subordinates you took in from the Hidden Night Pavilion are smart. They're all rather dumb and adorable." Emolien. "Your Highness, the Shu family's fourth miss has been rescued." Emolien glared at Huifeng. "You hurried over just to report such an insignificant matter?" Huifeng was a bit dumbfounded. Didn't His Highness ask him to stay there with 100 Imperial Guards to observe the situation? He thought that His Highness wanted to understand the situation, but who would have thought that his master didn't take it to heart at all? He reckoned that the order just now was just a casual remark, and he had completely forgotten what he had ordered him to do before. How did he end up with such a master? Huifeng looked helplessly at the Crown Princess. "It's fine. Go ahead and tell us." Arbor nodded and used an encouraging gaze to indicate for Huifeng to continue reporting. Just now, the young man was simply too stupid. He was rebuked by the Crown Prince's words. Fourth Miss Shu didn't suffer any substantial harm. It's just that her reputation should be damaged a little. Arbor replied with an "oh," and didn't say anything else. Then, there was an awkward silence. Huifeng, who was standing to the side, gave this brother a sympathetic look. Huifeng really wanted to slap himself. Look, this pair of troublemaking masters didn't particularly want to know about this matter at all, causing him to take it seriously and chase after them on horseback to report. This subordinate has already safely escorted the great king's consort and fourth Miss Shu back to the estate, Huifeng continued to recite. The crown princess replied with an "oh" again, and Hui Feng suddenly couldn't continue. Emolienne couldn't help but chuckle when she saw this. "All right, go back first." "Oh, that's right. We and the crown princess will be coming to Shiluo Street to distribute the grain tomorrow. You and Hui Feng will make arrangements together and make sure everything is done properly. If something goes wrong and this crown prince loses face, you know what will happen. That's all for today. Tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Chapter 1387. The two shuddered simultaneously and nodded repeatedly. "Yes, Your Highness." Arbor curiously looked at their constipated expressions and couldn't help but look up to ask Emolienne, "What's wrong with them?" "Oh, it's nothing. If they can't handle it, I'll throw them back to Marshall Mountain to continue training." "It's just training." Looking at their constipated expressions, she couldn't help but suspect that Emolienne made them do something that made them lose all hope in life. Prince Emo couldn't help but chuckle without saying anything. After the two of them rode back to the palace, the crown prince went to the king's palace to report the conflict, this time to the old great king. The extremely bored Arbor took out the bone-forging pill the sapling gave her with a flip of her hand. Suddenly, she heard the sapling excitedly shout in her conscience, "Master, master, you're finally planning to use this bone-forging pill, right?" "No." The little stoic's 3 words immediately extinguished the sapling Chochio's enthusiasm. This master was becoming more and more improper. "I'm going to distribute rice tomorrow and return home the day after tomorrow." Arbor counted with her fingers as if she was familiar with her family's treasures. "The day after tomorrow, I'll eat your bone-forging pill the day after tomorrow." She kept feeling that the sapling seemed to be obsessed with this bone-forging pill and didn't know if it would trick her. "Oh." The sapling responded, "Master, I'm telling you, I won't trick you. You'll know after eating it. This bone-forging pill is a very good pill. After eating it, your bone marrow and meridians will be greatly improved. The effect depends on the individual. Some people can be reborn from mortal bones to mystic bones, and some people can even reach spiritual bones in a single bound." "Oh, Master, aren't you excited?" Chochio continued to prattle. "I feel like you might become that person who reaches the heavens in a single bound." Arbor sat on the bed and ate 2 snacks from a box. She couldn't help but laugh when she heard this. "Why would you think that?" "Because you're master. Every time you advance, you create miracles." Jojo liked this explanation. Xiao Mu blinked. If the sapling was by her side right now, she would definitely gently stroke its dog head. "Master, it's boring to be idle. Why don't we go around the palace and see if there are any fresh animals to be kept in Paradise Planet?" "Good idea." Xiao Mu immediately put away the snack box and jumped to the ground. "Chochio, you truly do your best for Master." The little tray ant climbed onto her shoulder and danced with joy. "Chochio will not hesitate to go through fire and water for Master." The man and the tray ant walked out of the Eastern Palace and strolled around the palace as if they were strolling in their own backyard. "Master, there must be a small breeding farm in the palace. I'm guessing it's near the kitchen." "I thought so too." Arbor nodded. "We don't ask for much. 3 to 5 of each kind of small animal will be enough." The little tray ant giggled. Arbor nodded and walked along the high palace walls. There were layers upon layers of pavilions, green tiles, and vermilion eaves. Whenever she met a palace servant who bowed to her, Arbor would just nod perfunctorily and pass by. A soft sedan embroidered with blue and white flowers turned a corner and bumped towards her. Xiao Mu merely glanced at it absent-mindedly before walking over to the palanquin. A soft voice suddenly came from the sedan. "Stop the sedan." A fair hand slowly lifted the curtain of the sedan, and half a head poked out and called softly, "Crown Princess, please wait. The update has begun." Chapter 1388. Arbor stopped in her tracks and turned to look at the sedan chair. Commandery Princessy and walked out of the sedan chair with light steps and said with a smile, and greets the Crown Princess. Arbor nodded expressionlessly before retracting her gaze and turning to walk towards the royal kitchen. Commandery Princess Anne's smile froze on her face. She didn't expect that the young Crown Princess before her would not even bother to look at her. Crown Princess. Commandery Princess Anne quickly walked up and called out to her again, "Crown Princess, please wait." She signaled the two sedan bearers with her eyes, and they leaped forward gracefully to block Xiao Mu's path. Arbor creased her brows, feeling displeased. She wanted to go to the imperial kitchen to see if there were any farms nearby. The woman she had met a few times had stopped her time and time again. Now, she was even blocking her way, which made her feel a little annoyed. Couldn't she just let her stay by herself quietly? Crown Princess. Commandery Princess Anne slowly walked up to Arbor and said with a stiff smile, "And heard that someone barged into the Eastern Palace on the day of the Crown Princess wedding. Is the Crown Princess injured? Can't you see whether she is injured or not?" She really was trying to find a topic. Commandery Princess Anne was rendered speechless, so she could only smile awkwardly. Yes, it's good that the Crown Princess is not injured, and has been very worried these past 2 days. You don't look like you are worried about me. Arbor glanced at her, and wished for nothing more than to tear the young Crown Princess's mouth apart. Her words were simply too infuriating. She merely wanted to save face by going up to greet her and worm her way into being friends. After all, they would be seeing each other frequently in this palace in the future. Yet this young Crown Princess was so unapproachable. Crown Princess. Arbor raised his hand to stop her. "I have something to do now. Tell your men to move aside. Who would have the time to continue bickering with her here?" They weren't very familiar with each other, so why did she have to pretend that they were so familiar with each other? It was simply ridiculous. Commandery Princess Anne was infuriated to death by her, but she couldn't raise a ruckus, so she could only pick the important topic first. "Crown Princess, it's like this. Anne heard that the Crown Princess would be going to Shiluo Street to distribute rice and grain tomorrow. Anne also wants to go and contribute her meager strength." Arbor glanced at her. "You're also taking out 500 grains? 500 dawn." Commandery Princess Anne herself did not realize that she had actually exclaimed out loud. 500 dawn was equivalent to 50,000 liters of rice. Normally, 1 liter of grain was enough to last a family for 2 or 3 days. The Crown Princess actually said that she would distribute 500 liters of grain tomorrow? How was this possible? Even if she was the Crown Princess, and the Crown Prince's monthly salary was much higher than that of normal princes, it still couldn't support her wantonly squandering subsidies. It must be the great king and Her Majesty the Queen who privately gave her subsidies so that she could make the Eastern Palace proud. Commandery Princess Anne gritted her teeth as she thought this. She couldn't resist retorting with a stiff smile, "How is that possible? Anne just wants to go and help the Crown Princess." Liar. Arbor immediately turned hostile and glared at her mercilessly. "You said that you would do your part, but it turns out that you don't even want to take out a single bucket of rice. Then what use do I have for you? There are so many servants in the Eastern Palace. Do I still need a Commandery Princess like you to come and help?" Chapter 1389. Crown Princess, how can you say that? On the side, Su-er couldn't help but fret. "My Commandery Princess only wants to contribute her meager strength to help you." This Crown Princess was too blunt with her words. How could she mock their master like this? It had to be known that their master used to be quite wealthy. If it weren't for the fact that she had spent an astronomical price to purchase a prolongation pill at the House of Treasures that day, she wouldn't have had such a hard time recently. With the Commandery Princess's current state, she naturally couldn't fork out mystic currency to buy some rice for alms. Therefore, the best method was to stay by the Crown Princess's side and accompany her to make her presence known among the people. Presumably, with the Commandery Princess's gentleness and consideration, those people would definitely like the Commandery Princess more and not that stoic-faced Crown Princess. "I don't need your help. You aren't even forking out any rice, yet you are vainly trying to help me earn rice." A dignified Commandery Princess doesn't even find it embarrassing. Aba's harsh words simply made Commandery Princess and topple over in anger. What rice did I earn? Crown Princess, speak clearly. How could there be such an unreasonable person in this world, able to make someone stomp her feet in anger with just 3 sentences? Is that not the case? The young Crown Princess swept her an expressionless glance. The harem issues a monthly stipend every month, and you are not an exception. Yet you are still fighting with a bunch of junior royal maids and junior eunuchs for private work. You are simply petty. What? Commandery Princess. Sua was also so angry that her stomach was about to burst. She glared at Aba as she supported Commandery Princess En. Crown Princess, please watch your words. When did our Commandery Princess earn any rice from you? If you are afraid that she will steal your limelight, then just say so. Why find all kinds of weird excuses? The young Crown Princess swept a glance at the master and servant pair before scolding them for being crazy. Then she trotted away along the palace wall without looking back. The sapling Chochio, who was sitting on her shoulder, simply laughed until his stomach hurt. He knew his little master too well. This child simply despised Commandery Princess En from the bottom of her heart. There was no other reason than Commandery Princess and being petty. It should be known that the little Crown Princess had given a small task in the Eastern Palace. Whoever was willing to accompany her to stand on the street and distribute rice tomorrow would be rewarded with a bucket of rice every 2 hours. If there were many people who received rice and the distribution time was extended, the reward would be increased by a bucket of rice every 2 hours. As soon as this small task was announced, all the little eunuchs and palace maids in the Eastern Palace fought to do it. Even if they had no use for the food in the Eastern Palace, they could still secretly send it out of the palace to their families. Besides, who would complain about having too much food in this day and age? Aba ordered 10 little palace maids and 10 little eunuchs to help. She only needed 20 people, not one more. After the list of tasks was released, those eunuchs and palace maids who had not been selected looked disappointed. Commandery Princess and actually wanted to snatch the rice bowl of one of the royal maids or eunuchs just like this. Simply preposterous and shameless. How would Ian know that the young Crown Princess had such thoughts? She thought that the Crown Princess had rejected her because she had seen through her feelings for His Highness the Crown Prince. Because she had clearly heard that His Highness the Crown Prince would be accompanying the Crown Princess to the rice distribution tomorrow. She only wanted to create more opportunities to interact with His Highness. Did she also have to be rejected? Commandery Princess Anne's eyes flickered as she watched the Crown Princess's departing figure in disappointment. Chapter 1390. Commandery Princess, this Crown Princess is truly too abominable. Sua grumbled. Why does Commandery Princess have to put up with her every time? Commandery Princess Anne's eyes flickered, and she said with a sneer, Let's return to the Longevity Palace to pay respects to the Queen Dowager. When the hidden guard came to report, the Queen Dowager was pruning her favorite jasper crabapple. Recently, this jasper crabapple had been a bit wilted. Perhaps it was because of the weather, but the Queen Dowager's heart ached terribly. She ordered people to move it back from the gardener's place and personally took care of it. After hearing the hidden guard recount the dispute between the Crown Princess and Commandery Princess Ian word for word, the Queen Dowager was startled for a moment before suddenly bursting into laughter. The hidden guard twitched his mouth as he reported, This subordinate heard that the Crown Princess issued a mission in the Eastern Palace, and all the royal maids and eunuchs signed up. However, only 20 people stood out. This oddball Crown Princess. The rest of the people were randomly assigned by the master to follow along. Yet she actually gave them a reward and a quota for the trip. The Queen Dowager put down the scissors in her hand and nodded repeatedly with a smile. This granddaughter-in-law of mine is truly interesting. I actually feel that her methods are quite good. The servants indeed did not dare to disobey when she randomly assigned people, but how could they be as enthusiastic as when she used the mission reward to mobilize them? Since the royal maids and eunuchs have all volunteered to do this work, the rice distribution this time will definitely be completed quickly and smoothly. Just as she said this, Fonggu walked in with a sullen face and curtsied to Her Majesty the Queen Dowager. The Commandery Princess has come. The Queen Dowager's smile faded slightly, and she turned to look indifferently at Commandery Princess En, who had gracefully entered. En pays respects to the Queen Dowager. Commandery Princess En kept feeling that the Queen Dowager was lukewarm toward her these past 2 days. Even her gaze sometimes appeared extremely indifferent. Unlike in the past, when the Queen Dowager would beckon her to sit next to her with a smile every time she saw her. En, is something the matter? The Queen Dowager asked with a smile as she continued to prune the jasper crabapple, contemplating where to cut. This jasper crabapple was her favorite, so she absolutely could not let it die. En walked up with a glint in her eyes as she said with a smile, reporting to the Queen Dowager, "En wants to leave the palace early tomorrow morning." "Oh." The Empress Dowager glanced at her. "What's the matter?" Commandery Princess En said with a feigned smile. En heard that the great king's son consort caused quite a stir when she went to Shiluo Street to distribute rice. On the other hand, some of the pitiful commoners on Shiluo Street had suffered injuries of varying sizes. En feels that they are very pitiful, so she wants to bring Sur over to pay them a visit tomorrow. The scissors in the Empress Dowager's hand paused for a moment before she smiled and said, "That won't be necessary. The Crown Prince has already reported to the Great King. Tomorrow, he will accompany the Crown Princess to Shiluo Street to take care of the injured and distribute some food to the old, weak, women, and children. I think that the Crown Princess's decision is very good. I have already agreed and sent Granny Zhong to go with them." Commandery Princess An's heart skipped a beat. It turned out that the Queen Dowager already knew about this matter. As expected, she had underestimated how well-informed the Queen Dowager was. An quickly forced a smile. "Your Majesty, An also wants to put in some effort to go over and help." The Queen Dowager's hand that was holding the scissors tightened slightly. She shook her head and said faintly, "I don't think it's necessary. It's not good for too many people to go. The Crown Princess has already brought enough people on this trip, so it's good that you have this intention." Chapter 1391. When An heard this, her pupils involuntarily contracted. No, it wasn't her misconception. The Queen Dowager actually rejected her? Her original intention was to complain to the Queen Dowager. It would be best if she could persuade the Queen Dowager to give the order to arrange for her to be part of the Crown Princess's entourage tomorrow. At that time, no matter how unwilling the Crown Princess was, she had the Queen Dowager's verbal edict. Could it be that the Crown Princess could still make things difficult for her? As long as she had a few more chances to interact with His Highness the Crown Prince and let him clearly see her gentleness, generosity, and beauty, then there would still be a lot of hope for her future. But now, the Queen Dowager actually rejected her. Could it be that she had done something wrong that caused the Queen Dowager to dislike her? Commandery Princess An was perplexed, but she had no other solution. The Queen Dowager had already spoken, so she couldn't pester her any further to avoid incurring Her Majesty the Queen Dowager's disdain. After she left, Fenggu couldn't resist scolding. "In the past, I didn't realize that the Commandery Princess was such a pretentious person. Now that I look at it, she really has gone overboard with her pretense." "Isn't that so?" The Crown Princess had clearly rejected her going to help, yet she still dares to beg Her Majesty now. Nanny Zhong also retorted angrily, what does she think of herself as the Queen Dowager? If Her Majesty the Queen Dowager really agreed to her request and stuffed her into the Crown Princess's entourage, what would the Crown Princess think? The Queen Dowager sighed and said with a shake of her head, "I still remember when she was young. When I brought her into the palace, she was only 9 years old. At that time, she was so small and skinny, like an overly frightened small animal. She would panic at everyone she saw. For a whole half a year, she would wake up from nightmares in the middle of the night every time." "That's right. Her Majesty the Queen Dowager personally brought her to her bedchamber and took care of her for half a year." Fenggu gritted her teeth and said, "Yet unexpectedly, she raised an ingrate who would poison Her Majesty the Queen Dowager now. This old servant still feels that we should send the Commandery Princess far away as soon as possible or marry her off as soon as possible." Nanny Zhong also said coldly, You should know that if there is a first time, there will be a second time. She can often enter Her Highness's bedroom, who knows if there will be a next time. The Empress Dowager let out a long sigh, put down the scissors in her hand, and glanced at the wilted jasper begonia. This flower can't grow long. It's the same with people. They will go astray if they are raised. I don't know when they will go astray. Your Highness, don't worry. This jasper begonia can still be saved. This servant will post a mission in the city tomorrow and invite the best gardeners into the palace. The next day, the Crown Princess woke up early in the morning and led 20 junior palace maids and eunuchs, setting off with the Crown Prince's group towards Shiluo Street in a grandiose manner. The accompanying 1,000 imperial guards maintained order. When they arrived at the entrance of Shiluo Street, a group of junior palace maids and eunuchs began to set up a stall, dividing up the work and working together very quickly. 2 young eunuchs stood in front of several rice buckets, waiting for orders. The other 2 eunuchs held a booklet for registering grain, ready to record at any time. Very quickly, a queue formed at the entrance of Shiluo Street. The junior leader of the Imperial Guards maintained order while constantly reminding the commoners in the queue, "Have you all seen the announcement? Elderly people who have reached the age of 55 and children under the age of 16, regardless of gender, can receive 5 liters of rice. Don't push and shove each other, and even more, don't cut in line. Once it is discovered that someone is disrupting order, your qualifications to receive it will be revoked." Everyone's hearts burned, and their expressions were slightly agitated as they whispered to each other and discussed animatedly, continuing at night. Chapter 1392. The notice had been posted yesterday, and the conditions for receiving rations were very generous. Moreover, each person could receive 5 liters of rice. This was simply like a pie falling from the sky, making everyone overjoyed. Mystic cultivators, body cultivators, and the like, be more self-aware. Today's rations collection event does not include people with special abilities. Once they are tested to have mystic energy or other abilities and come to falsely claim rations, they will all be arrested and thrown into prison. The head of the royal guard strapped himself on a golden saber and stood in front of the line, loudly shouting to maintain order. The line was divided into 3 lines. One line would first go to the testing stone to test their age and ability. After passing, they would go to another line to receive rations. After receiving their rations, they would go to the 3rd line and stamp a red mark on their elbows to indicate that they had received their rations. Once this kind of red mark was stamped, it would not disappear within a day, so there was no need to line up for a second time. Along the way, if they moved quickly, it would not take too much time, so the line's movement speed was still very fast. The junior eunuchs and junior royal maids divided up the work. Some scooped rice, some stamped, and others went to register and move the rations. All the elderly and children who received rations were all beaming with joy. Once it is discovered that someone has stolen rations, they will be punished according to the highest punishment, so do not have any wishful thinking. The Royal Guard commander, Hui Feng, loudly said, "This time, other than distributing rations, another mission will be issued. All the residents of Shiluo Street, regardless of whether they are in the shed area or in the private houses, can accept the mission to repair the western city wall. The mission has already been posted in the notice area. Those who are interested can go take a look." Following Hui Feng's roar, several dozen people who had been watching from the periphery hurriedly ran toward the mission notice area. It had to be known that every time the imperial court issued a mission, the benefits and preferential treatment were basically good. If they were late, there would definitely be no such popular missions. At the same time, in a dilapidated temple in Shiluo Street's old district, sunlight passed through the pillars and beams covered in cobwebs and slowly shone in, sprinkling in front of an old Buddhist shrine. The bodhisattva with a dirty face was missing an arm and was tilted to one side. The 2 empty, worn-out plates in front of the table were covered in dust. A spider had made its home on the bodhisattva's face, diligently weaving its web in great joy. "Mother, mother, quickly get up, quickly get up." A young lady in her early 20s, dressed in plain clothes, excitedly pushed an old woman who was sleeping soundly in the corner. "Mother, mother! Get up quickly, Shiluo Street is giving out grain today. You and little brother quickly go get the grain for me. We have to hurry up and snatch it. If we're late, there won't be any left." The eldest young lady pushed her mother up with all her might. Cough, cough, cough. The woman sat up with a wrinkled face. "Cough, is that so? Where did you hear that? I heard that notices have been posted everywhere. Everyone knows about it. It's just that we live in a run-down temple, so we don't get the latest news." "Mother, hurry up." The big girl grumbled and urged. "Where's my brother? Little brother. Little brother." That girl walked to another corner and forcefully shook the tattered quilt. She went up and kicked that thin and weak lad as she angrily scolded, "You're really useless. To think that you're a level 2 mystic cultivator. Everyone else can go out and do missions, but you're the only one who's afraid of death, hiding in this run-down temple all day long, fighting with a bunch of ordinary people for food." The boy kicked her too. "What are you doing?" Chapter 1393. The girl threw a tattered outer garment at his face. "What are you doing? You only know how to sleep and sleep all day. Get up and go get your grain." The woman coughed twice and stopped her. "Ing-chun, don't treat your younger brother like this. Song, your older sister said that someone is distributing grain at Shiluo Street today. Let's go take a look." When he heard that there was grain to be collected, the thin young man crawled up quickly. He casually put on a jacket, wiped his dirty face, and walked out of the run-down temple. How could people who lived in this kind of run-down place care about washing up? It was already pretty good if they could take a bath once in a year or so. The woman's family of 3 walked out of the run-down temple and ran towards Shiluo Street. The moment he stepped out, he realized that everyone was rushing towards the same place. The young man instantly believed a little more about the rice distribution. He rubbed his shriveled stomach and licked his lips. He hadn't eaten a full meal in a long time. His eyes would turn red at the sight of food these past 2 days. The 3 of them were mixed in with 7 or 8 beggars of various sizes as they followed the small groups to the street entrance. Today's sunlight was especially bright, and it felt warm and cozy when it shone down on them. Xiao Mu had rewarded the group of junior eunuchs and junior royal maids in advance by treating them to a feast last night. They ate well and slept well, so everyone was in good spirits. Even though they had been busy for half the morning, everyone was beaming and no one complained about being tired. A young girl wearing gray clothes and a blue and white cotton cloth wrapped around her head impatiently grabbed her mother's hand and quickly moved forward with the flow of people. Everyone in the line held a cloth bag filled with rice in their hands as they eagerly looked forward. When they thought about how they would be able to carry a lot of rice back and not have to starve at night, the smiles on the elderly and children's faces became even brighter. "Hey, isn't that the little dog who lives in the bunk next to us?" The thin and weak young man called Song glanced at the tanned and thin boy at the front of the line. He raised his eyebrows and walked over to the other side. "That's right. Let's line up over there. Little dog. Little dog. Older sister Ing-chun?" The tanned and skinny boy was stunned. Seeing that Song wanted to cut in front of him, he didn't say anything. Miss Ing-chun supported her mother and hurriedly walked over. However, before the 3 of them could cut in, they heard a series of shouts from behind them. "What are you doing?" "Cutting the queue. Someone cut the queue." "How shameless, we've also been waiting here for a long time." Sir, there's someone cutting the queue here. Please come and take care of it." The roars of the crowd attracted the attention of a junior commander of the Imperial Army. He raised his dagger axe high in the air and roared, "Quiet down, you." He pointed at the ashen-faced Miss Ing-chun. "Go to the back." Miss Ing-chun was instantly unable to maintain her composure, and her entire charming face darkened. "Ing-chun, don't make a fuss, don't make a fuss. It doesn't matter if it's earlier or later. Let's just line up at the back." The woman was afraid that if they stirred up trouble, the 3 of them would be at a disadvantage, so she hastily grabbed Miss Ingchuan's hand and pulled her and her son out of the line to line up at the back. However, with this delay, another 7 or 8 people had already lined up in their original spot. Hence, the 3 of them could only line up angrily at the end of the line. The junior commander of the Imperial Army glanced at them. Chapter 1394. She suddenly said loudly, "I'll remind the newcomers again. There's an age limit to receiving grain. Young adults between 16 and 55, especially mystic cultivators, body cultivators, and superhumans, are not within the range of receiving grain. Don't waste time trying." Huh. The woman instantly grabbed her daughter's hand in panic and quietly said, "Ing-chun, our ages aren't within this range. Also, your younger brother is a mystic cultivator." "Mom, don't be nervous for nothing. They're just scaring people. Look at your frail and aged appearance. Who would believe you're not 55 when you walk out?" Miss Ing-chun looked forward and narrowed her eyes slightly. She saw a dozen or so huge rice barrels piled up in front of Shiluo Street's food stall. The rice inside was piled high into a mountain, and each grain was plump and eye-catching. The sun gradually rose higher in the sky, and the early spring sunlight melted the chill. At noon, the temperature rose, and the crowd began to stir. "Why is it so slow? Is the line moving or not? It really is quite hot." A plump old woman pulled at her collar and wiped away her sweat. The woman was hot and anxious, and beads of sweat seeped out of her forehead. She unbuttoned the 2 buttons that bound her collar and cautiously turned her head to glance at her daughter. "Ing-chun, will there really be no problem? What can happen? Don't worry." The young lady called Ing-chun impatiently said, "When we have rice, we can cook a big pot of rice porridge tonight. It'll be even better if we can get a few meat buns." The old woman hadn't smelled meat in a long time. When she heard her daughter say this, she felt her mouth salivate and couldn't help but swallow. "Hey, it's moving, it's moving. The line is moving a bit faster." The people in front happily called out and moved forward along with the slowly advancing line. "Mom, I want to eat 2 big bowls of rice tonight," Tsonger called out. Okay. The woman coughed a few times and repeatedly nodded with a smile. "Mom will cook for you, Mom will cook for you." Ing-chun immediately said in dissatisfaction, "What rice? Eat porridge. If we cook porridge with 10 liters of rice, it's enough for our family of 3 to eat for more than a month if we eat sparingly." Tsong-er immediately harumphed. I want to eat, Mom." All right. The woman glanced at her son with pity and sighed. "Ing-chun, your younger brother doesn't have enough to eat every day. If your younger brother and I can each receive 5 liters of rice today, our family will have a full meal no matter what." Miss Ing-chun didn't utter a word. She had nothing to say when she thought of the difficulties and hardships she had gone through during this period of time. The woman slowly moved forward with the line. At this time, there were already hundreds of people behind them. In fact, the speed at which the procession was moving forward was not slow. It was just that they were waiting anxiously and felt that time was passing very slowly. At this moment, as they looked at the rice bucket that was getting closer and closer to them, their eyes slowly began to shine. Suddenly, the woman lifted her dirty sleeve to wipe her eyes. She blinked hard as if she couldn't believe what she was seeing. When she opened her eyes again, she suddenly exclaimed, "Ing-chun, come and see. That person. That. The girl sitting there, she. Her. Is she the eldest daughter of the first branch?" "What main branch?" The girl named Ing-chun followed her mother's finger and looked forward. Her eyes immediately went blank. Chapter 1395. Who is that? She reflexively lowered her head to glance at her own dusty clothes, then at the fair and tender little girl sitting at the front of the line. She simply couldn't believe her eyes. She was wearing a plain-colored top, a lake-colored satin gauze robe on the outside, and a jewel-colored silver silk skirt on the bottom. Her black hair was loosely tied into a bun, and the remaining 2 strands of hair brushed against her cheeks. Her creamy left hand wore a lustrous bracelet embroidered with green bamboo, and her right hand wore a pair of gold-threaded bracelets dotted with emerald blue. A lake-colored belt was tied around her waist, and a sachet of flowers of the same color was hanging from it. She sat silently next to a handsome man, her eyes fixed on the moving crowd in the line. "No, it's not her. Mom, you've got the wrong person. How could such a refined and elegant noble lady be the eldest daughter of that pair of villagers in Kwoto village? Even if she was beaten to death, she wouldn't dare believe it. No, Mom recognizes that stoic face of hers." Madame Neily shouted agitatedly, "If she really is the eldest daughter of the eldest branch, then everything is easy to discuss. We're all relatives, so wouldn't it be better to ask her for more rice?" "No, it's impossible, impossible." Chow Ing-chun bit her lip and suddenly reached out to grab an auntie behind her. "Auntie, take a look. Who is that young lady sitting in front?" "Io." That auntie softly cried out in pain, but her eyes also looked forward. She then smiled. "You don't even recognize her. That's the Crown Princess, our northernmost Crown Princess." This rice distribution event was single-handedly hosted by the Crown Princess. In this entire northern MO, other than our Crown Prince and Crown Princess, who else could be so generous as to distribute 5 liters of rice to each person? Chow Ing-chuan's expression instantly turned extremely unsightly. She didn't believe it, didn't believe that that little village girl could actually become the Crown Princess? Seriously, what kind of joke was this? She was only a village girl. How could His Highness the Crown Prince marry a village girl? He must have been deceived. No, she had to expose her identity. To expose her true colors. "Ing-chun, what are you doing, Ing-chun, Ing-chun?" Madame Li hurriedly grabbed her hand and said, "It's almost our turn. Don't be so anxious. Did you forget that we were pushed to the back of the line? Don't waste all your previous efforts. 52 years old. You are not in the age range. Leave this place immediately." After the ashen-faced woman was pulled out of the crowd, she cried and threw a tantrum. Sir, please have mercy on me. Rules are rules. Let's go." Hui Feng waved his hand and immediately had the woman thrown out of the crowd. Upon hearing this, Madame Neili's body trembled and she hastily tugged at Chow Ing-chuan's hand, asking in a low voice, "And what's that? How can you tell his age?" "That's a testing stone. It's used to test talent and age. It's usually used by mystic cultivators to test their levels." Chow Tsung's expression turned ugly. "Mother, do you think we've waited so long for nothing? Our ages aren't in this range." Madame Neili immediately straightened her neck and made a scene. "I don't care. In any case, I've waited for so long. If she doesn't give me food, I won't let this matter rest. Besides, we're all relatives. Is there a need to be so harsh on us?" Soon, it was Madame Neili and her son's turn. Chapter 1396. Chow Ing-chun coldly stood at the front of the line, and her sword-like gaze landed on Arba. Chow Mu wasn't an idiot. She quickly detected this kind of pressuring gaze and looked up in the direction of the gaze. When she saw Madame Neili and Chow Ing-chun, she couldn't help but be startled. She still remembered that when she led Brother Xiao Hu to trigger his meridians in Shijiao City, she bumped into Madame Neili and her children. After that, she never saw this outrageous family of 3 again. The next time they met was 7 or 8 years later. However, looking at their beggar's attire and haggard appearance, they probably didn't live as they wished. "Come and take the test," the junior royal maid called out. Madame Neili was blindly excited and pushed away the royal maid's hand. She coughed excitedly and hastily walked up to Arba. "You're Arba from old Chow's eldest branch, right?" Me. Second auntie. Jojo, do you still remember me?" "Second auntie, ha ha ha." As he said this, he actually laughed out loud in joy. His laughter was like a few ducks swimming in a lake. Arba didn't think there was anything to be happy about meeting Madame Neili's family. The first time they met was in Kwoto village. Madame Ne Li brought her precious daughter Qiao Ying-chun and wanted to rob her of her supplies without any explanation. After she chased them away, she even ran to elderly Lady Qiao's place to instigate her. The second time they met was in Shijiu City. At that time, she brought Brother Xiao Hu to the Mystic Cultivator Association to trigger his meridians. Then, she got into a conflict with Qiao Tsung's master, Uncle Master Bai from Daybreak Sect. That was also her first time meeting Murong Soon. From the looks of it, nothing good happened every time she met Madame Ne Li and her children. "Come and take the test." The junior royal maid angrily roared and immediately dragged the excited Madame Ne Li to the testing stone to press her handprint. 50 years old. A normal person. 50 years old doesn't fit the age. Throw her out. Arbor coldly said. Prince Emo glanced at Madame Ne Li and her children but didn't say anything. When Madame Li heard that she was going to be thrown out of the line and wouldn't be able to get half a grain of rice, her eyes immediately turned red. She coughed loudly and said, "Ah, let me go, let me go. You cursed little beast. How could they be so cold-blooded and heartless to their own relatives? In terms of seniority in the family, I am your second aunt." Qiao Tsung was also anxious. He pointed at Arbor and said, "You're Arbor. You're Arbor, right?" A trace of hidden hatred flitted through Qiao Yingchuan's eyes. She suddenly pushed aside the crowd and dashed forward. With a plop, she knelt down in front of Emolien. "Your Highness the Crown Prince, you must be His Highness the Crown Prince. This commoner greets Your Highness. Your Highness, this humble girl has something to report." "Your Highness, you mustn't be deceived by this little village girl beside you. She wasn't the daughter of a noble family. She's just a village girl. She's not worthy of your noble status. She was a village girl from Kwoto village. Your Highness." After Qiao Ying-chun finished reciting, she turned to look at Arbor and said with a malicious sneer, "Arbor, I don't know what method you used to deceive the Honorable His Highness the Crown Prince. But today, I'm here to expose your true identity." The Crown Prince abruptly stood up. Qiao Yingchuan's face was filled with joy as she looked up at the Crown Prince expectantly. As she expected, Arbor had indeed deceived the Crown Prince. The Crown Prince would definitely fly into a rage out of humiliation and punish this woman. Humph, what Crown Princess? A village girl delusionally wants to sit in the position of the Crown Princess? She's simply a fool's dream. Tie her up. The end of the night watch. Chapter 1397. Prince Mo's handsome face was taut as he pointed at Qiao Ying-chun and her children. "Disruptors, go to jail." A cold voice rang out mercilessly, causing Qiao Ying-chun and her children's faces to turn ashen. How was that possible? It couldn't be. She was clearly there to expose this woman's true identity, so why didn't His Highness the Crown Prince arrest Arbor instead of the three of them? Qiao Yingchuan's eyes widened in shock. Her mother, Madame Ne Li, was already trembling in fright. She hastily dragged Qiao Ying-chun back and screamed, "No, no, don't." Madame Ne Li grabbed her children's arms tightly and shielded them behind her with all her might. "Don't imprison my children. If you want to imprison me." A week ago, their family of three finally arrived at the Emo Kingdom base after going through countless difficulties and dangers. They always thought that they would definitely have good days in the future, but they didn't expect that they would face the crisis of being imprisoned just because they came to collect rice. Qiao Ying-chun and Qiao Tsung were also quite frightened. Their bodies trembled as they hid behind Madame Ne Li, and their eyes were filled with terror as they looked at Arbor. Arbor didn't even bother to look at them. She was already familiar with Madame Ne Li's family of three. The three of them were all brainless, so what was the point of bickering with a few brainless people? "Qiao Ying-chun, I didn't expect you to only grow older but not wiser these few years. You're already so old, yet you're still so stupid." Arbor mocked expressionlessly. "Looks like you're quite lucky to be able to survive in this chaotic world for so long." "What did you say?" Qiao Yingchuan's face flushed with anger, but her mother tightly grabbed her wrist. Aba coldly glanced at her, causing Chao Ing-chun to swallow back the words she had yet to utter. What are you still standing there for? Rules are rules. Anyone who dares to cause trouble during this rice distribution operation will be imprisoned, Emolien said indifferently. Imperial guards immediately strode over and surrounded Madame Nei Li and her children. Don't arrest me, don't arrest me. Chao Tsung immediately cowered and shrieked in panic. It's that woman's fault for speaking nonsense. Arrest her, arrest her. Don't arrest me, I didn't say anything. You coward, what are you saying? Chao Ing-chun shrieked and stepped forward, wanting to kick Chao Kong. However, she was held down by a few Imperial Army soldiers, and no matter how she struggled, she was unable to break free. Aba coldly glanced at them and waved his small hand as if he was shooing away flies. The Imperial guards immediately responded with a yes, and dragged the Chao family's mother and sons out of the crowd. Aba, how could you treat old Chao's relatives like this? Aba, I want to see your parents, Aba. Madame Li seemed to have been slapped twice, so she could only obediently shut her mouth. Did you see that? There was an age limit for receiving grain today. Let me remind you again. Don't come here hoping that you'll get lucky. Once you're found to be an imposter, all of you will be imprisoned. Imperial Army Commander Hui Feng repeated the rules over and over again. Aba swept a glance over the crowd and did a head count. The 500 grains today would probably be distributed by the afternoon. If there weren't a few people causing trouble in the queue, this distribution speed would still be acceptable. After Chao Ing-chun's family of 3 was chased out, no one else dared to take the risk of receiving grain despite their age, so everything proceeded smoothly. At 5 in the afternoon, the long queue had already ended. Everyone hugged their grains and happily thanked them before leaving. Chapter 1398. Aba stood up and said to the group of junior royal maids and eunuchs, "All right, pack up and let's go home." Everyone cheered in unison and swiftly packed up the tables, chairs, stools, rice buckets, and other items, moving them back into the food store. The food store's shopkeeper stood at the door with a grin with a group of waiters. He respectfully bowed in salute and was about to respectfully send off the Crown Prince and Crown Princess. Suddenly, an old woman with a lame leg walked over shakily with a crutch and a broken bowl in her hand. She hurriedly called out, wait a minute, I haven't received the rice yet." There was a large, half-rotten sore on the back of the granny's hand, and there was also a 7 to 8-year-old, dark-skinned and dignified child following behind her. His pair of black eyes were curiously looking at Xiao Mu and the others. "Apologies, Granny. Today's rice distribution has already ended. You came late." A tall and frivolous royal maid hastily walked up and blocked the grandmother and grandchild to prevent them from charging over and bumping into the nobles. When the old granny heard this, tears immediately dripped down her cheeks. I live at the old, dilapidated temple on East Street. When we heard the news, we hurried over, but we didn't expect to still be a step too late." When she thought of how sad she was, the old granny couldn't control her emotions and started bawling. The royal maid glanced at the old granny sympathetically and reflexively turned to look at the stoic-faced crown princess. The young crown princess glanced at the old granny and grandchild and said with a frown, "How much can this broken bowl hold?" The royal maid's expression lit up, and she hastily fished out a rice pouch and stuffed it into the granny's hands. "Granny, the crown princess wants you to go over and receive your rice." When the lame old granny heard this, she immediately cried and laughed at the same time. Many thanks, many thanks." She originally wanted to walk to Aber's side, but when she saw Aber and the others' bright and beautiful clothes, she was afraid that she would dirty the nobles' clothes and incur their disdain. She stopped after a few steps and looked awkwardly at the royal maid who spoke to her earlier. When the royal maid saw this, she immediately understood. All right, I'll go get it for you." Unexpectedly, as soon as she said that, she heard her stoic-faced young crown princess holler, "Come here, everyone." The old granny was a bit startled and didn't have time to think. She quickly held her grandchild's hand and shakily walked over. When he heard this, he couldn't help but chuckle and turned to glance at the little fellow. Why was this scene so funny? Trembling, the old woman opened the bag that the palace maid had given her. Rice suddenly flowed out of the fairy-like little girl's sparkling and translucent jade-like hands and into her own bag. The little grandson at the side blinked his black eyes and hurriedly stretched his neck to take a look at the bag of rice. Wow! After the bag was filled to the brim with rice, the elderly woman emotionally wiped her tears and quickly tied the bag tightly. She repeatedly cupped her hands and thanked Xiao Mu and company. Thank you, little Mississippi. Thank you, young sir. Eat of the nobles. Thank you, nobles. Thank you. Auber flicked his finger, and a small jade bottle landed in the old granny's hand. He said expressionlessly, "Take the white pill orally and dissolve the red pill with warm water. Apply it externally to sores. You'll recover in 2 days." The old granny was startled, and her eyes immediately widened. Chapter 1399. But after that little girl finished speaking, she swaggered off with a noble young master beside her without even turning her head back. After the two of them returned to the Eastern Palace hand in hand, Auber's heart stirred, and he called out for Sapling to drag them into Paradise Planet. "Yesterday, I caught quite a few small animals from the palace's farm. Do you want to come over and take a look?" Auber pulled his hand in high spirits. With a thought, they came to Sapling's newly built farm. They saw a large open space in front of the magnetite mine, enclosed by a fence that was half a person's height. Inside, several kinds of animals were being raised, most of which were common animals like pigs, cows, sheep, chickens, ducks, and so on. Sure enough, there were only 3 to 5 of each kind, and they were all alone inside. Auber looked up at Emolienne and said, "Look, we don't have to worry about lacking meat and poultry in the future. Master, do you want to come and take a look at the spiritual tea tree?" "Okay." Auber pulled Emolienne's hand, and the two of them teleported to the center of the entire paradise. This spiritual tea tree was planted in the center of the paradise. It was very open all around, without any shelter. The peach blossom trees were also transplanted to a slightly further place. At this time, this spiritual tea tree was still only a small seedling as thin as a bean sprout. The two of them squatted in front of the spiritual tea tree and carefully looked at it. Xiao Mu blinked and asked, "Qiu, this spiritual tea tree is still so small even after so long. When exactly will it grow up?" Right now, Little Water and Little Earth are still in closed-door cultivation. After they come out, there will be sacred water to nourish the sacred soil to cultivate it, plus I'll pull the seedling to help it grow. Oh, no, accelerate its growth. In this way, it should be very fast. Auber nodded his little head. "Then when will they wake up?" "I think it's about time. At most, another 10 days to half a month." Auber hurriedly nodded. "Okay. Then this spiritual tea, will something happen to people in the profound realm when they drink it?" "Yes. They can't withstand this spiritual energy, and their bodies may explode. But Master's situation is different. In any case, you can use spiritual energy now." "Then I can't give it to grandmother." Auber tilted his head, and his eyes suddenly lit up. "Emolienne, come with me." Their figures flashed, and when they appeared again, they were already behind the peach blossom slope. The maple pavilion stood on the slope where peach blossoms fluttered in the wind. The longevity tree with its colorful, ball-shaped flowers was moved to the side of the maple pavilion. On the other side, there was an especially huge mutated peach tree. This peach tree was the one that had been nurtured by little soil. At this moment, it was like a towering tree that towered into the sky. It was covered in fruits, and each peach was as big as a wash-basin. It was so big that it was a bit exaggerated. "How about I give grandmother a pair of peaches for her birthday? Then, I'll use high-grade longevity grass to make 2 longevity pills for her. What do you think?" Auber muttered, "It's a pity that the longevity tree hasn't borne fruit yet. Otherwise, I could make 2 longevity pills for grandmother." The effect of the longevity pill was naturally incomparable to the longevity pill. However, looking at the longevity tree's current state, who knew how long it would take for it to bear fruit? "Baby, it's already very good." Emolienne cupped her little face and praised, "Grandmother will be very happy." Arbor nodded. Suddenly, his eyes flickered, and he saw a small snake head poking out from between the leaves of the longevity tree. A pair of big, watery, cute eyes blinked as it looked at Arbor. Chapter 1400. Suddenly, it cried out Master Silver, and slid over to her with tears in its eyes. Arbor stared blankly and subconsciously reached out her hand. The little white snake slid its body all the way to her palm and cried pitifully, "Master, master, master." "Hungry." Arbor's mouth twitched, while Emolienne on the side smiled faintly. She reached out 2 fingers to pinch the snake's head and lifted it up. "This crown prince is also quite hungry. Why don't we cook some snake soup?" The little white snake shook its wriggling little body, bubbles in its eyes. It turned its head to look at its master and said, "Master." Slap. Emolienne unhappily slapped the snake's head. "You idiot, why aren't you transforming into your human form?" This summoned beast's body emitted the aura of a beginner sacred beast. It could transform into a human a long time ago, but it always turned into a cute little snake and acted spoiled and cute in front of his darling Chow. What a headache. Not only did she have to guard against humans, she also had to guard against beasts. Her heart felt so tired. She had to keep a close eye on it at all times. I won't. The cute little snake proudly raised its snake head. Its eyes were misty as it cutely looked at Arbor. If it had 2 little hands, it would definitely have a look of asking for a hug right now. Arbor couldn't help but be a little speechless. This human and snake could even fight, so what else could she say? She pulled Emolienne's hand and held up the little white snake. She glanced at the coquettish snake rolling in her palm and couldn't help but shake her head. "Let's make a pot of stew. It's simple and delicious." Emolienne's lips curled into a smile. Her eyes were like knives as she poked that damn white snake and said with a smile, Snake meat stew in a pot. It's very delicious, Jojo." This damned slandering man. The little white snake's 2 big round eyes angrily glared at Emolienne. After a while, Emolienne made a pot of mushroom meat stew. The 2 people, 1 snake, 1 ape, 1 chicken, 1 phoenix, and 1 squirrel sat in a circle and ate with relish. It could be said that they were all gathered together today. Other than Sacred Water and Sacred Earth who hadn't come out of seclusion, the other summoned beasts and contracted beasts were all present. That little white snake almost buried its head into the plate in front of it. "Little snake, I'll give you a name." The moment Arbor said that, the little chick who was pecking at meat with its little mouth, choked on its own. It's here, it's here, it's here, it's here, it's a historical moment again. After the little master continued, the little snake. The little snakes, the master, the snake, the master, the snake, the master, the master. The blazing blood-fire phoenix, who had shrunk to the size of a blue swan, couldn't help but turn its head and roll its eyes at him. "Are you sure?" I've thought it through. The little white snake nodded its little head vigorously with an expression that said, "Please give me a name, please give me a name." Arbor tilted its head and thought for a moment. "Then I'll call you Snaky from now on." The little white snake. Snaky? Master, are you sure this is a name you came up with after careful consideration? Arbor picked up a mushroom with his chopsticks. "Or should I call you Softy?" Cough, cough, cough. The Bloodfire Phoenix suddenly felt that the name she given to it by this scoundrel wasn't too bad. "How about she, Emolienne's mouth twitched as she calmly picked up a wineglass. Master, why, you should just call me Snaky." The little white snake stuttered. Chapter 1401. Take a closer look. You're snow white all over. How about I call you Whitey? No, no, master, look. This little fat squirrel is also covered in white fur. He's more suitable for this name. The little snake betrayed his teammate without a second word. Chirp. The little fat squirrel expressed that he didn't understand what they were saying at all, and his little furry face revealed a bit of foolishness. Don't bully Chirp. He's so small, and his comprehension is limited. Arbor said softly. After saying that, the phoenix, chicken, snake, and ape all swept a disdainful glance at the fat squirrel that was acting dumb. Jojo, high-level mystic beasts all have spiritual intelligence, not to mention the ones beside you. As long as they're divine beasts and above, they can all transform into human form. Emolien coughed lightly and said while pointing at the little fat squirrel, he should be a sacred beast. Otherwise, when the bloodfire phoenix egg entered your conscious pool back then, you would have kicked it away long ago, no? Arbor blinked. Aside from the ape and the divine bird Qingwan, in other words, the little white snake, the phoenix egg, and the little fat squirrel beside her were all sacred beasts? Emolien nodded vigorously. So don't be fooled by their adorable appearances. Who's adorable? The bloodfire phoenix was the first to cry out in defiance. This lord has never acted cute or foolishly. Don't compare me with those two idiots. If I'm not wrong, this little white snake that's acting dumb. It should be the ancient netherworld great void serpent. He has the power of the netherworld. Emolien swept a glance at the little white snake whose eyes flickered. Arbor picked up the small bowl and ate 2 mouthfuls of rice. She looked at the little white snake with sparkling eyes. Then how about I call you Ming Ming from now on? When the little white snake heard that, compared to the unreliable snake, soft, thin, and white names, this Ming Ming sounded much more pleasing to the ear. It quickly nodded its head and agreed, worried that its little master would go back on her words. Egg. The bloodfire phoenix's mouth twitched. I'm no longer an egg. Oh, right. Last time I named you Fire. Arbor nodded. The day after tomorrow, I, your master, may go into seclusion for a few days and take that bone-forging pill. All of you better behave yourselves. Don't fight with each other, okay? All of them nodded their heads in unison. At first glance, they looked rather obedient. Master Silver, that immortal venerable, is here. He has been pacing back and forth in your sleeping quarters. I think he doesn't know how to get in. Why hasn't he disappeared yet? Arbor looked at Emolien in shock. He's been here all this time? Yes. Emolien nodded slightly. These days, I've had Hidden Flower accompany him to drink and chat. Don't worry, he won't be too bored. Master, do you want to drag him in? Hey, what do you think? He should be an expert in the god realm. Wouldn't it be a problem if he didn't go back? Wouldn't the heavenly Tao find trouble with him? Or could it be that there was actually a freaking god-sending talisman, but she just didn't know how to draw it? Heh. Cho-Cho laughed. Master, you have a lot of god realm experts around you. Don't all of them rely on things like Dharma treasures to hide their auras and hide from the heavenly Tao's search? Arbor was startled, and his gaze naturally shifted to Emolien. Cho-Cho chattered endlessly. What's there to be afraid of? At worst, I'll just be dragged to the heavenly Tao's punishment realm for a walk. Cho-Cho, what did you say? Ah. Master, what did I say? Chapter 1402. Arbor's face was stoic as she said coldly, You did. You were talking about the realm of punishment. Cho-Cho, who had a quick tongue, immediately glanced guiltily at Emolien, who had an ugly expression on her face, and hurriedly stuffed mushrooms and meat slices into her mouth. No, Cho-Cho didn't say anything. Don't tell me you're hiding something from me. Arbor keenly sensed that something was amiss. Emolien hurriedly pulled her to her side and smiled reassuringly. It's fine, Jojo. Don't listen to Little Tree's nonsense. What does it know? It's just spouting nonsense all day long. Don't mind it. The sapling flattened its little mouth that was embedded in the tree trunk and snorted. It waved its arms and legs and shouted, "Master, I'd better drag the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal in. He's still rummaging through your bedroom looking for you." Aber. A moment later, a certain venerable Peach Blossom Immortal's eyes brightened as he discovered that he was in a place filled with flying peach blossoms. He looked up and saw that the little girl and her group were under a peach blossom tree not far in front of him. They were sitting in a circle and eating as if they were having a picnic. "Wow, little fellow, this mystic domain of yours is probably tailor-made for me, right? Look at how beautiful the peach blossoms are. It's definitely the most suitable place for me to stay." Aber was speechless. "Don't you want to go back?" "I want to go back. But it's fine if I stay here for a few more days." The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal turned to glance at Aber pitifully. "You don't know where we are. We only know how to cultivate all day long. There's neither good food nor good wine. There's no joy at all. It's not easy for me to come back. I must eat my fill and drink to my heart's content before I leave." Aber! Exclamation point. "You glutton." In other words, you dared to provoke the heavenly Tao for the sake of eating and drinking. Won't there be any problems? There will. If the heavenly Tao finds out, it'll be terrible. A small punishment might be being struck by lightning. A big punishment might be being thrown into. Woo 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 woo. Before the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal could finish speaking, Little Tree Cho-Cho pounced over and stuffed his mouth with a branch. F***CKU. The venerable immortal angrily pulled the little tray ant off his face and snorted. Then, he put on a smile and sniffed a few times. "What are you eating? Come on. Add another pair of chopsticks. Hurry up. It's more fun to eat with more people." After the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal forced his way into this small circle, the three of them gathered together with their beasts. They even brought a few bottles of wine and planned to have a drink. However, Aber felt as if something was pressing down on her heart. She felt heavy. Occasionally, she would raise her head and see Emolien smiling innocently at her, which made her swallow the question she was about to ask. Sigh, forget it. Since they don't want to talk about it for the time being, then I won't ask. Aber finished the rice in his bowl and wanted to scoop 2 spoonfuls of soup, but then he found... Where's the soup? There's no more soup. This pot of stew was enough for at least 7 or 8 people, but it was finished just like that. Everyone's appetite was really good. The next day, Emolien accompanied Aber back to the Marquis of Jiyuan's residence. Knowing that the Crown Princess was returning home today, the main gate of the Marquis's residence opened wide early in the morning. Qiao Zhongbang and his family were all waiting expectantly. When they heard a servant come to report that the Crown Princess's carriage had already entered Minshan Avenue, they immediately rushed over. Qiao Zhongbang, second Uncle Qiao, and the rest of the family all rushed toward the main gate and looked at the entrance excitedly. They saw a handsome man and a beautiful woman appear at the main gate hand in hand. Chapter 1403. Greetings, Your Highness the Crown Prince, greetings. Everyone's eyes curved into crescents as they stepped forward to greet him. We're all family, no need to be so courteous. Older sister is back, older sister is back. Xiao Lin cheered and was about to pounce over to give her older sister, whom she hadn't seen for many days, a hug. Unexpectedly, a small figure was faster than her. He jumped in front of Aber and hugged her leg, shouting, "Benefactress, benefactress, benefactress." Aber couldn't help but find it funny. She bent down to pick up the little monk and knocked on his little head. "You missed me?" This little monk missed Benefactress very much. When Benefactress wasn't here, this little monk couldn't eat or sleep in peace. "Woo-woo." The little monk sniffled and nodded. "You heartless little one." Wei Ziqin was amused and annoyed at the same time. "I wonder who's been cooking all kinds of vegetarian food for you recently to make you happy." "Benefactress's mother," the little monk said in a childish voice. Aber rubbed his little bald head in amusement. "Mother, let's go in and talk." The group of people moved to the main hall and gathered together, laughing and chatting happily. When they talked about yesterday's trip to Shiluo Street to distribute food, Xiao Lin pouted angrily and said, "Why didn't Big Sister bring me to something so fun?" Wei Ziqin hit her daughter in annoyance and reprimanded softly, "You can play with anything. Father, mother, second uncle, second aunt, younger brother, younger sister, we brought you some small gifts. Take them and distribute them." Mo Lien had people move the things in and handed them out one by one. For mother and second aunt, there was a set of head ornaments and jewelry. For father and second uncle, there was a famous calligraphy and painting. For younger brother, there was a set of the 4 treasures of the study. For brother Xiao Hu, there was a famous sword. For Xiao Lin there was a pair of golden brocade wristbands. Everyone couldn't help but hold their gifts, grinning from ear to ear. "This is for eldest aunt and cousin Ruolin. If mother visits them later, you can bring it over." "Good, good, good." Wei Ziqin chuckled and nodded. The little monk sat on Auber's lap and looked at the gift boxes in everyone's hands. He asked weakly, I don't have any?" Auber couldn't help but find it funny. With a flick of his wrist, he took out a pink and fluffy hat from his inner world and put it on the little monk's bald head. "Nice." "Yes, yes. Ha ha ha." Jolin was laughing so hard that he fell down. "Did you see that? That lotus flower was embroidered by Big Sister. Do you like it?" Auber's eyes curved as he lowered his head and asked the small monk. The corners of Mo Lien's mouth twitched silently. He didn't know if he should praise his wife for her hobby of embroidering lotus flowers. The little monk reluctantly nodded his little head. "She looks a little ugly." Pfft. Everyone hurriedly held back their laughter, pretended to cough, and each took a cup of tea to drink. "Don't complain, I'll tell you." Auber flicked his little head. "Wear it when you go shopping in the future. Don't always show your bald head." "But it's a little hot." Second Uncle Chow choked on his tea. It was going to be hot soon, and his little niece actually gave the little monk a fluffy hat. This was simply, "Did you do your morning ritual today?" Auber changed the topic. "I finished it yesterday," the little monk muttered to himself, immediately forgetting his earlier protest. Chapter 1404. After eating lunch, Auber followed Mo Lien back to the Eastern Palace. Since he didn't have anything to do in the afternoon, Auber took out the bone-forging pill and glanced at it. "Are you going to take it now?" Mo Lien asked as she set down the scroll in her hand. "Qiu said it would take 3 days, but I feel like it's a bit of a scam. It'll probably take 5 to 7 days." "Okay, if you finish forging as soon as possible, there won't be any problems afterwards." Mo Lien wouldn't stop things that could increase her strength. On the contrary, she was very supportive. Auber nodded. "After forging my bones this time, I hope that my body won't be so weak when fighting against people below the spiritual realm. At the very least, I won't vomit blood after getting hit by 2 palms. Jojo, you will definitely succeed." Mo Lien nodded with a smile. "Let's go. I'll bring you to the cultivation area in the back room of the bedchamber to enter closed-door cultivation." Auber hummed in assent and stood up, allowing her to lead him to the secret room. After the stone wall on the wall shifted back to its original position, Mo Lien turned around and walked out of the secret room with a smile. Huifeng flipped in from outside the window and cupped his hands. "Your Highness, how is the investigation going?" Huifeng nodded. "According to the information that the Hidden Night Pavilion has collected over the past few days, we have basically confirmed it. It was Commandery Princess En who arranged for a group of local ruffians to cause trouble on your Highness's big day." A severe glint flashed past Mo Lien's eyes. As expected, it was this sick woman. She actually dared to ruin such an important day of his big day. Simply abominable. "Your Highness," Mo Lien ordered coldly, "continue." But that day, when the Crown Princess was serving tea, the person who bribed the royal maid Kai Chin to poison Her Majesty the Queen Dowager was not Commandery Princess En. Huifeng said, but Her Majesty the Queen Dowager seems to be convinced that it was Commandery Princess Yi and who poisoned her. Was it the vassal king of Nan's estate? Huifeng nodded. That's right. There is a maidservant in vassal king consort Wu's estate, and she is the royal maid Caiqin's younger sister. After this person was captured, Princess Anam had been secretly instructing Caiqin to do things. Mo Lien sneered. You don't have to tell me the truth. Let's just let grandmother think that this ingrate did it. This way, it would be easier for him to make his move and prevent his grandmother from being soft-hearted and obstructing him. Before evening, the crown prince went to the great king's imperial study and talked to his father about something. When night fell that night, an abrupt imperial edict was sent to the vassal king of Nan's estate. The edict praised the vassal prince of Nan both overtly and covertly, saying that since the vassal prince had reached the marriageable age, Commandery Princess Anne was to be his principal wife. This edict came out of nowhere and caught everyone off guard, but the vassal prince of Nan was rather happy. Previously, he was still looking forward to how he could get his father to ask the great king for an imperial edict. He didn't expect that the edict would come just as he was thinking about it. Although it came very suddenly, it didn't hinder him from achieving his goal. The vassal prince of Nan, Cho Fu, was very happy. He led his family members to kneel down and respectfully received the edict. On the other hand, the vassal king consort of Nan and the vassal king consort looked at each other in bewilderment, not understanding why this edict was issued so strangely. When Huifeng reported this matter to the crown prince was taking a nap in the study's compartment, so he merely nodded when he heard this. He was the one who went to ask for the imperial edict, so he already knew about it. But why does the crown prince want to fulfill the vassal prince of Nan's wish? Huifeng asked in puzzlement. It had to be known that the vassal prince of Nan had always been interested in Commandery Princess Anne and had already expressed his desire to marry her. The crown prince scoffed. We are going to fulfill their wishes and let them die. Chapter 1405. A pair of scumbags and AB*TCH. What a joke. Of course, they couldn't do anything to the vassal king of Nan's family for no reason. After all, the vassal king of Nan's ancestors had fought alongside the former king. If they were to target a meritorious official for no reason, not to mention that the common people's spit would drown the Mo family, even the imperial censors would certainly remonstrate to death. However, the vassal king of Nan's estate had been constantly making moves recently. What was even more laughable was that they thought he was unaware as the crown prince. It was fine, let them continue to make trouble. By then, Yi-un would have already married into the family, so he could behead them all at once. This way, they would have a companion on the road to the Yellow Springs. At that time, not to mention that he was vicious and merciless, they had brought this upon themselves. Huifeng looked at Prince Mo's expression and quickly lowered his head. Your Highness, there is another matter. The several dozen burly men who caused a ruckus on South Shiluo Street should have been hired by someone. Someone wanted to cause a large number of casualties, but they didn't expect Your Highness to arrive so quickly with the royal guards. The crown prince narrowed his eyes. Continue investigating and ferret out the mastermind. He had a premonition that the organization behind this wanted to make another move after failing to clean up the polluted water source. This time, perhaps they were targeting the Mo Kingdom base. After all, the Mo Kingdom base had the most human traffic and had the most complete defensive fortifications. As long as they wiped out the Mo Kingdom's defensive fortifications, it would be easy to dismantle the other fortifications. He keenly sensed an impending storm, and he closed the book in his hand. On the other side, when news of the betrothal reached Commandery Princess Ian's Anya Pavilion, she simply couldn't believe her ears. What did you say? Say it again. The fine-toothed comb in Commandery Princess Ian's hand unwittingly fell to the ground with a clatter. She sat on a small stool with her long hair draped over her shoulders. Her eyes were wide open, and her rosy face after bathing appeared as ghastly pale as a sheet of paper. Suer immediately burst into tears. Miss, the great king's decree has already reached the vassal king of Nan's estate, and the vassal prince of Nan has already received it. The wedding date is set for 1 month from now. After the Queen Dowager's birthday banquet, it will be Mrs. turn to get married. Commandery Princess Anne's vision darkened, and she nearly toppled off the stool. Fortunately, Su saw that something was wrong with her and immediately rushed forward to support her. Miss, you have to hold on. You must not fall. What did the Empress Dowager say? The Queen Dowager also knows the great king's intention behind this marriage decree? Commandery Princess Anne shrieked. How can the great king make such a decision on his own? Without the Empress Dowager's permission, she personally arranged my marriage. Please be careful with your words, princess. On the side, the long-faced senior maidservant Ming Qian calmly said, The great king did not disgrace the commandery princess's reputation by betrothing you to the vassal prince of Nan. Even if the Queen Dowager finds out, she probably won't object. No, I won't marry him. I will not marry Chou Fu. I won't. Commandery Princess Anne stood up, losing control of her emotions. This was the first time she had revealed such a furious and agitated expression. I want to see the Queen Dowager. Su, follow me to see the Empress Dowager. Yes. Miss, please think thrice. Ming Qian hastily chased after her and shouted, In the current situation, the great king has already issued his royal edict. It is impossible for the Queen Dowager to disgrace the great king for the Commandery Princess's sake. Commandery Princess Anne instantly collapsed onto the small stool. Chapter 1406. However, before she could sit properly, she collapsed limply onto the ground. Suer's heart ached when she saw this, and she called out repeatedly, Miss. Help me to the Queen Dowager. Help me over. Commandery Princess Anne pleaded with reddened eyes and tears. No matter what, she had to go and try. No matter how slim the hope was, she could not just casually entrust her future to a strange man like this. She couldn't accept it. A summer rain abruptly arrived after dusk. The torrential downpour poured down like a hole in the sky. Thunder boomed. 2 people were kneeling in the rain, their faces covered in mist, unable to open their eyes from the rain. Fenggu walked up to the 2 people while holding an oil paper umbrella. She looked down at the 2 delicate women kneeling on the limestone floor and said with a shake of her head, Commandery Princess, it's raining heavily outside. You had better return early. Nanny Feng, I want to see the Queen Dowager. Nanny Feng. The Queen Dowager has already rested. Fenggu gazed at her coldly before telling Su, why haven't you brought your master back yet? Nanny Feng, I want to see the Queen Dowager. Nanny Feng. Commandery Princess, don't be so unappreciative. What kind of person is Her Majesty the Queen Dowager? Is she someone you can meet whenever you want? Fenggu swept her an indifferent glance and said, Why haven't you withdrawn yet? Do you want me to order the royal guards to carry you back? She said this extremely bluntly. Commandery Princess Anne collapsed to the ground in shock and fury. Under the rain and wind, she actually fainted in Suer's arms. Miss. Suer shrieked in shock. Fenggu scoffed inwardly with a mocking expression. She turned to instruct a junior royal maid behind her coldly. The Commandery Princess is unwell. Go to the Royal Physician Building and invite a royal physician over to take a look. Yes. Suer supported her young miss who had fainted and shouted at Fenggu's departing figure, Nanny Feng. Suer felt chills in her heart. It turned out that after losing the Queen Dowager's favor, the master and servant pair's days in the palace were actually so difficult. My Lotus's section break. Ever since Abba consumed the bone-forging pill, he sunk into a wondrous realm. She activated her inner vision and could see that her bone marrow and meridians were being forged and expanded at a speed visible to the naked eye. Naturally, this process was extremely unpleasant. However, after experiencing the pain of the secret realm fusing with the blood vessels in his dantian, all of this seemed to be nothing to Abba. She calmed herself down and sat there cross-legged. Just like that, she stared at her own bone marrow meridians as they changed inch by inch under the forging of the bone forging pill. At this moment, her bone marrow was gradually covered with a layer of white light from her thighs, sternum to her skull. It looked extremely holy and radiant. If there were any outsiders here, they would definitely be very surprised to see that the little crown princess was emitting strands of holy white light all over her body. When all of her bones turned into a lustrous white color, Arbor understood that this should be the metamorphosis that the sapling Chochio had mentioned, the transformation from a mortal skeleton to a mystic skeleton. At this time, the changes to her body were very obvious. Not only had her defensive endurance greatly expanded, but her attack power had also reached the point where she could send a mystic cultivator below level 15 flying with a heavy punch. It was hard to find a match below the spiritual realm. End of the night. See you tomorrow. Chapter 1407. No, she might even be able to disregard the attacks of some low-level soul realm cultivators as ineffective against her. Moreover, the changes to her bone marrow continued to change with the passage of time. With this change, Arbor truly felt the horror of having her broken bones reconstructed. It was the pain of having her bones broken inch by inch and being reconstructed anew. Even the bloodline in her body could not help but scream crazily. Pain. Pain. It was 2F** king painful. However, she could not be afraid of this pain. The more she thought about it, the more it hurt. She could only overcome this psychological fear by facing it head-on. Miss Chow simply blocked her 5 senses, concealing her spirit and chi, and entered a state of complete emptiness. However, the pain in her bone marrow did not mean that she could not feel it immediately after blocking her 5 senses. The pain that penetrated deep into her bone marrow still existed, but it was slightly better in comparison. Arbor suddenly opened her eyes. Within her inner vision, she discovered that her bone marrow had turned from glowing white to being covered with a layer of faint purple light. This faint purple light was still gradually turning into a faint pinkish-yellow color. However, cold sweat trickled down her head, and she felt that her bone marrow was about to go numb from the pain. Suddenly, a pink figure appeared beside her. With a flick of his sleeve, the little girl fell to the ground with a plop. A certain venerable immortal sighed. With another flick of his sleeve, he supported her body. The little tree Chochio's tree face was full of guilt. Dodo hopped out of the paradise. Master, master, master. So noisy. The venerable immortal brushed this noisy tree man aside in annoyance. You are too bold. You actually gave her a god-level bone-forging pill. If she can't take it, you know what will happen. Master, she won't be able to take it. The venerable peach blossom immortal glared fiercely at the tree man. She has already reached the half-step immortal bone realm. If she takes another half-step, what do you think will happen? Her mystic realm cultivation will not be able to take the violent transformation of her bones and blood. She will... No. The little tree man was sweating profusely as he spun around on the spot. Then he wailed, I was wrong. Venerable immortal, please save her. She's fine. The venerable peach blossom immortal glared at the little tree. Haste makes waste. You'd better remember this. The little tree ant drooped its head listlessly. 5 days later, Arbor opened a pair of slightly dazed eyes and was shocked by a little tree ant that suddenly jumped in front of him and cried loudly. What exactly did little tree experience? The leaves on his head seemed to have been roasted by fire, and there were 2 panda eyes hanging on his head. He looked like he had been beaten up several times. Arbor was speechless. He touched the scorched leaves of the sapling and asked, What's wrong with you? Master. Just as the sapling was about to jump onto the bed, it was kicked to the corner by the little water baby who suddenly jumped up. The sapling held its head and counted mushrooms. Master. The water child's tears pitter-pattered down. With a flip of her hand, Chow Mu took out a jar from her inner world and adeptly collected the sacred water. The little water baby was speechless. Master, you worried us to death. A squarish lump of dirt suddenly popped out from behind the little water baby and said naively, "You don't know. You've been unconscious for 4 to 5 days. You scared me to death." Chapter 1408. 2. 844 Fooling Around. Are you even human? With a flick of her sleeve, Emolienne brushed the little ones to the side. Sitting down by the bed, he raised his hand to touch Auber's forehead. The man's eyes were slightly worried. "Jojo, you're too much of a troublemaker." Auber blinked, looking at him in confusion. She glanced at the little tray and hiding beside the cabinet, and her heart skipped a beat. "I thought you were going to forge your bones, and only forge your mortal bones into a mystic skeleton. I didn't expect you to take a god-tier pill." Auber instantly glanced at the little tray and hiding behind the cabinet, looking at her with a guilty expression. Needless to say, it must be this troublemaker's doing. She knew this little guy was unreliable. Sure enough, he wanted her to reach the heavens in a single bound. But she was only at the 14th level of the profound realm. If she couldn't reach the heavens, she would explode. But at this moment, she secretly looked inside herself, and could see that her bones were actually an extremely light yellow. "I forged my spirit bones?" "Not only that." Emolienne shook her head. "You forged your half-step immortal bones." Emolienne helplessly reached out to stroke her head. "With your current body's defensive power, as long as you aren't surrounded by more than 10 great spirit masters at the same time, most spirit masters below the 10th level won't be able to do anything to you." Auber's eyes brightened. Originally, her original goal was to not get injured in the hands of people below the 5th level of spirit masters. She didn't expect the forging of her bones to go so smoothly this time. "Smooth your head." Emolienne raised her hand and lightly patted her forehead. She snappily grabbed her and gave her a hard bite on her little face. "You are, if I don't keep a close eye on you, you'll mess around. When you go into seclusion in the future, I'll watch over you from the side." Darling Chow immediately shook her head like a rattledrum. "No, no, how can I calm down with you by my side?" Hearing this, Emolienne's phoenix eyes brightened. She raised her hand and pulled her into her embrace. "Why? Are you panicking when you see me?" Auber was both amused and annoyed. He raised his hand and smacked him. "Nonsense. How are you talking nonsense? Why don't you admit it?" Emolienne rubbed her head. "How are you feeling now? How do you feel?" Auber tilted his head and suddenly reached out to pinch his face. "I feel a little hungry. You haven't eaten for 4 or 5 days. Emolienne held her hand and got off the bed. He turned his head and stared straight at her. Auber looked down at himself. "Why are you staring at me like that? Take a look." Emolienne casually stuffed a bronze mirror into her hands. Chow Mu couldn't help but be taken aback after taking a look. As it turned out, after forging her bones, her skin had become even more delicate and translucent. On her tender little face, her almond-shaped eyes were glowing, and she looked extremely beautiful. So delicious. Emolienne reached out and picked her up, then frowned. "You've lost weight again. Someone, prepare the meal." Emolienne carried her to the table while muttering softly, "Jojo, you have to eat an extra bowl of rice every day. This way you can quickly grow taller and fatter." She no longer had extravagant hopes for growing taller. After rolling his eyes at him, Auber dragged a stool over to sit next to him. "Nothing happened while I was in seclusion, right?" "No, everything was calm and peaceful. I was so idle that I had nothing to do every day." "If you want to talk about something major, it might be the great king's betrothal between the vassal prince of an Nan and commandery princess in N." Chapter 1409. Auber, who was drinking soup, almost choked. "You did it." Her expression was a bit odd. "MHM, MHM." Emolienne nodded vigorously, looking like he was asking for praise. He looked at his wife with a grin and said, "Who told that Ian to always hover around us like a housefly? It's so annoying. The earlier we marry her off, the easier it'll be. What do you think of my handling of this matter?" "Not bad." Darling Chow also nodded in agreement. "I don't know what's wrong with that person, but she always likes to deliberately get close to me. Do I look that stupid? How can I become good sisters with her just by letting her bluff me a bit? How can there be such a comical thing in this world? I don't like her. She's terribly scheming." Auber scooped up a spoonful of rice and swallowed it. When she looked up, she saw Emolien, this guy, staring fixedly at her with his flickering phoenix eyes. "You don't know why she got close to you?" "How would I know?" Auber scooped up another spoonful of rice and swept him a suspicious glance. "Cough, then let me ask you something." Emolien coughed lightly and moved the stool closer to his wife. He asked cautiously, "That day, we ran into Old Fourth, which is the fourth princess. Do you still remember?" "I remember this. She even ran to your father and fiercely complained about me, saying that I beat her up so badly that she couldn't go out to meet people." Auber fumed whenever she recalled this matter. "Why don't you tell me, when and where did I beat her up?" The crown prince couldn't resist face-palming. "My darling, you really don't remember?" Auber's hair would stand on end whenever she heard the words, "don't remember." After experiencing passive amnesia, she would often stubbornly say to other people that she remembered everything. How could I not remember? Emolien really wanted to laugh when she glanced over with her small gaze. Subsequently, he nodded repeatedly with an "everything my wife says is right" attitude. He quickly said, Right, you remember everything. It was that time when you stepped in to save eldest Chin on the street. You beat up Old Fourth." Auber was suddenly enlightened. "Why didn't you say so back then?" Emolien couldn't help but be speechless. It seemed that some people, no matter how many times his wife saw them at the palace banquet, would turn a blind eye to them. "No wonder she looks familiar to me," Auber muttered to himself as he ate a mouthful of food from his small bowl. "But she still had the cheek to cry to your father. She's robbing people on the street. Is she in the right?" Emolien. Bao, she really wasn't here to rob us that day. She was here to capture eldest Chin." Emolien felt that it was necessary to talk to the little girl about the relationship between men and women, lest she was either cultivating or fighting all day long. Prince Emo thought to himself that if he chatted more, he would definitely be enlightened one day. "Why?" Auber looked at Emolien curiously. "Why?" Emolien coughed lightly. "You've heard that Emo Shuang wants to marry eldest Chin, right? It must be because Emo Shuang likes him that she wants to marry him." Auber put down her bowl and chopsticks. "But didn't eldest Chin reject her long ago?" "Yes, but there are so many infatuated men and resentful women in this world. It's not as if the other party can give up just because the other party rejects, right?" Auber instantly understood and nodded. "Fourth princess is too persistent." Emolien. Say, this little girl doesn't understand, but she immediately understands when you tell her. Say, she understands, but she always looks like she doesn't understand. How worrying. Why must she run headlong into an iron-headed tree like eldest Chin? Not everyone is as decisive as you. Prince Mo's heart stirred, and he hugged her tightly in his arms and stroked her hair. You can say that she doesn't understand love, but she can see things so clearly sometimes. Emolien lowered his head to kiss her face. Chow, let me ask you something. Yesterday, I found a small booklet with both pictures and text in your official box. Was it for you to study? MMM. Emolien widened her almond-shaped eyes and looked innocently at Auber, who had reached out to cover her mouth. The little guy spat at him, and her face flushed red as she immediately moved away from his lap and ran out. "I'm going to eat first." "Wait. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.